Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the June 24th, 2020 Pittsburgh Board of Public Education and Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit virtual legislative meeting. Would everyone please rise so we can salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And thank you. We're going to now hold a moment of silence in honor of Mr. George Floyd. And following that moment of silence, we're going to have our very own Amir Hardy, a 2020 Pittsburgh Kappa graduate, sing "Lift Every Voice and Sing." All right, the moment of silence starts now. All right, thank you. Mr. Hardy?
Hello. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
Thank you, Mr. Amir Hardy. Song is a little difficult to sing, but the words are absolutely perfect. They were perfect when they were written, and they apply so very appropriately to the times that we're living through at this very moment. So thank you, Amir.
Thank you guys for having me.
We're so glad to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will begin first this afternoon with the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit. Mr. Weiss, may we please have a roll call?
Mr. Carter.
Here.
Ms. Edwards.
Here.
Ms. Falls.
Present.
Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Ms. Harbin.
Here.
Here.
Kennedy.
Present.
Stella Farrow.
Here.
Drew Dean.
Here.
Ms. Wilson.
Here. Okay, will board members please turn to the minutes from May 20th, 2020? Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions? All right, hearing none, I'd like to have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the May 20th meeting for the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit. I think that looks like Miss Kennedy is making the motion.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to get unmuted, so moved. Thank you.
I need a second, please.
Second, Veronica.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And I believe we have enough to pass that. All right, the committee report on education for the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit has no business this month. The committee report on business finance that includes agenda item 23.01 through 26.05 is before you. Are there any questions or comments that were not answered at agenda review? All right, hearing none, could I please have a motion and a second to approve this section of the business finance section, please?
So moved.
Is that Ms. Falls?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have a second?
Second, this is Terry.
Thank you. Mr. Weiss, may we have a roll call on this portion of the business, please?
Carter. Carter. Yeah, we'll come back to Mr. Carter. Ms. Edwards,
Yes.
Ms. Falls,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher. Gallagher,
Yes.
Ms. Harmon,
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Ms. Delafaro,
Yes.
Mr. Dean,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
The motion is approved 8-0. I got a note here, Mr. Carter left the meeting. If he comes back, we'll ask him to vote.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll move to item 27.01 through items 27.03. And this section is the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit's Personnel Report. Are there any questions or comments on this report? All right, then hearing none, may I have a motion and a second to approve this personnel report, please?
So moved, this is Terry.
Thank you. Second?
Second, Ms. Falls.
Thank you, Ms. Falls. All right, it's been properly moved and seconded, so Mr. Weiss, may we have a roll call, please?
Carter. Ms. Edwards. Ms. Edwards,
Yes.
Ms. Falls,
Yes.
Mr. Carter, we're voting on the personnel report of the IU. Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Harmon,
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy,
Yes.
Delafaro,
Yes.
Mr. Dean,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
8-0.
All right, thank you. I also got a text from Mr. Carter. He is having difficulties getting back into the system. So somebody might be able to help assist him get back on, please. Okay. We now are at item 28.01, which is the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit's financial travel report for May 2020. Are there any questions or comments on this report? All right, hearing none, could I please have a motion and a second to approve it? Mrs. Kennedy is making the motion, I believe.
Yeah, I didn't think we approved financial and travel, but I'll make the motion.
Yes, that's what we're on now.
Yeah, right. We need a second, then we'll vote.
Yeah, I was waiting for that. All right, I'm waiting.
Second.
Is that Ms. Falls?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. All right, go ahead. I think on this one, I think we just have to, I don't believe we have to have a roll call. I think we just have to just plain vote on it with an aye.
You have a voice vote.
That's what I thought. All in favor of this? Vote aye.
Yes,
Aye.
yes, aye.
All right, sounds like the ayes have it. Thank you very much. All right, this meeting for the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit is now adjourned.
We have to have a motion,
Sylvia, we have to take a motion to adjourn.
Okay,
so moved,
yeah, we don't always do that, but go ahead. Yes, go ahead. We'll have a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second.
Cindy, all right, all in favor of adjourning the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, it sounds like we are officially adjourned now.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes,
excuse the interruption. Mr. Carter is saying that he can't join in because it says the host removed him.
okay, that's why I asked if somebody that's doing the technical can help him out, because I can't see what it is. I just know he's not able to get back in. So the host, if that's Miss
No, it's Dave. Dave's
Dave
the
Downiak, okay. Because I knew it was either Laura or
He's
Dave.
showing us back in now.
Okay,
I'm back, I think.
all right, thanks. We're going to move on now to the Pittsburgh, excuse me, to the Pittsburgh legislative meeting for June 24th, 2020. And at this time, I'll read the executive session statement. In addition to executive sessions announced at the legislative meeting of May 20, 2020, the board met virtually in executive sessions on June 17th and immediately before this legislative meeting to discuss various personnel matters that may include but are not limited to administrative vacancies and positions open and closed. The board does not vote at executive sessions. All right, moving forward. I think one portion is missing. I think the minutes, I'm missing the minutes for the, I skipped them. I didn't mean to go to executive session. We have to first vote on the minutes from May 20th. And are there any corrections, additions, or deletions to the May 20th legislative meeting session? If there are none, then could I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of that meeting, please?
So moved.
Second.
It was Ms. Harbin and Mr. Carter?
That was Miss Falls.
Ms. Falls, sorry, you can't hear it. All right.
That's okay.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Are there any negative votes on this? Hearing none, then it stands approved. All right, now we're moving to the committee report on education, which is before you, submitted by myself, the chairperson in my committee. The report includes agenda items 5.01 through 8.37. There were no items pulled for further discussion at agenda review. Are there any questions or comments on the committee report on education at this time that were not answered at agenda review? All right, hearing no questions or concerns, could I have a motion and a second to have a roll call vote on the committee report on education? I need a motion and a second.
This is Carrie, so moved.
Ms. Kennedy?
This is Devin, second.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Telefair. Mr. Weiss, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Falls, I'd like to make a motion to make an amendment. Is this the right time?
Yes.
Ms. Bass?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to amend item 8.33. Actually, let's start with 8.35, which is the code of conduct. And there was a lot of discussion about this code of conduct at the policy workshop, and then there were testimonies at the public hearing. And based on that, I would like to make a motion to remove number 199 from both the K-5 and K-12, which is other disruptive behavior not to find elsewhere.
So can I speak to that real quick before we begin to vote? Just letting you know administratively,
I told the administrative team to remove that from the code of conduct already, but we can still vote on it, but it's moving forward anyway at this point.
Okay, so when we vote, that one's not going to be in there.
So let me ask this question. David, have we removed that from this current code of conduct yet? Because I know we had that discussion.
Yes, Dr. Hamlet. David May-Stein, Chief of School Performance. Dr. Hamlet, we did remove Code 199 from the K-5 Code of Conduct and the 612 Code of Conduct.
Okay. On these current documents, I want to make sure these current documents are
These
free of
current
199.
documents represent the changes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I wasn't informed of that. All right. So then I would like to make a motion to revise 228 from repeated level 1 or level 2 infraction to just repeated level 2.
What number are you?
It's on 8.35 Code of Conduct, and there is inside the Code of Conduct 228, repeated level 1 or level 2 infraction. And I want to change that to make a motion to revise it to just repeated level 2.
No, I'm sorry.
That requires a second for the board to discuss that.
Second that.
From what okay, Ms. Harbin is making a change and on 8.35 on the code 228, level 1 to level 2, repeated level 2 is what she's talking about. Ms. Seconded that. Do we have any further discussion?
This is Terry. I have a question about that. So
Go ahead.
if we don't, what happens now after repeated level 1s go on forever? And so to the point that classes continue to be disrupted and children aren't being educated and the teacher has no recourse beyond whatever you can already do for level 1. What's going to happen?
Yeah, I think so. Here's the issue with repeated level 1. Right now in our policy, we don't suspend for a level 1, and some of the level 1 offenses, frankly, are really small offenses. But the problem is when you have a repeated level 1, for example, for being tardy. So if you're tardy, it says that we give them 3 chances, and we document it 3 times, and then we can suspend them. And I think we overuse that. That's a way to just say, well, you've done something wrong 3 times. Maybe the problem is our intervention in those 3 times wasn't the correct intervention. So I don't believe that doing something that's a low-level offense that we've already said is a very low-level offense and you can't suspend for it, that you should do interventions, to then say, well, but if you do it 3 times, and there's really no, like, is it 3 times, like you do it the first day of school, then you don't do it again. You do it twice the first day of, the first week of school, then you don't do it again till the end, then you suspend. I don't think there should be anything that's like subjective, and, I just think our intention is to do interventions. And if there is an infraction that's a low-level infraction, it's not harming anybody, making a kid stay home from school is, I think, an overreaction and not something that we should do. So I think suspension is going too far.
Okay, so I can understand, like, especially if in your example, that 2 the first week of school and 1 month later, that doesn't make sense. But what about if we're not talking about tardy, but what if it's a level 1 offense that's disrupting class and the child continuously repeats that same issue, that same disruption over and over again, and it's not working the intervention because the child realizes they're at the maximum punishment. So what now? So the rest of the class should have their education interrupted because this child is purposely acting out because they know at this point what they're doing. They know that it's wrong because by this point we've had meetings. There's been the teachers talk to them. The teachers probably talk to the parents. The counselor, social worker have been involved, but the child is purposely doing the behavior. So what recourse does the teacher have, the principal have, or whatever? And what about if I have a student in that class that's not learning as a result? What recourse do I have? And I'm not saying you're not wrong in some instances, I agree with you in some instances, but I'm thinking of other instances, like if a child's tardy or wearing the wrong clothing, that's a different issue. Wrong clothing, we should have extra clothes at the school and just put them in the right clothing. If they're tardy, we don't want them to miss more because that's reinforcing being tardy. But if a child keeps disrupting, and that's what's causing interruption to class, because being tardy and wearing the wrong clothes is not really disrupting learning, in my opinion. But something that's going to disrupt learning continuously, I think there has to be a recourse for the teacher.
Suspensions
stronger
don't
than
improve
whatever.
behavior.
Right, but so, all right, so if I have a child that's disruptive and the level 1 recourses haven't corrected the behavior, what's going to correct that behavior? I mean, if my child.
I think then
does
we
something-
try a different intervention.
All right, and how long do we do this while the class is continuously interrupted? How many times for repeat offenses do we let go on to the point? Now, how long? A week? 2 weeks? A month? 2 months? How long?
So at a certain point to address that, the notion is that you want to instill or embed progressive discipline, meaning it's going to progress higher to higher levels of difficulties over time, as far as the infraction of the consequence as a result. And so how that looks in progressive discipline is different than just saying, okay, you're disrupting class on a regular basis, and it's this level, but you're actually impacting the education of students, but also more importantly, you're impacting your own education, which is detrimental. Your behavior is detrimental to your education. So it needs to increase, but also we need to make sure we put more intensive supports in there as well, because obviously there's something going wrong with the child.
Oh, and I fully agree. But I'm afraid that if we say we can never go, to a suspension after repeated level 1 offenses and multiple different interventions and so forth, at one point, are we not helping anybody?
So as we look at repeated level 1 and level 2 violations as part of the code of conduct, parents and or guardians must be notified of the first time there is an infraction and of the intervention that's implemented. And this information is documented and recorded. And it's important to note that not all repeated violations for level 1 or level 2 end up in a suspension. Principals work very closely with families and with students and use every opportunity to keep kids in school. The first order of business is definitely not to suspend students out of school.
And I appreciate that, and I understand it's basically when all other options are exasperated. But at what point do we hit exasperation, and are we hindering when we get to that point if we remove repeated level 1 from this option?
I just, taking a student's education away, even for one day, is like the most serious thing I think, that we can do. And I think we all agree with that as a district, that we are not trying to take students' education away. But we still have, a high amount of suspensions. They are still disproportionately Black, brown, and disabled students. And I don't think we should set a policy as a board to, encourage the use of taking a day of education away for a low-level offense. I'm not saying remove it for level 2. I'm saying repeated level 1 is something that we've already decided we don't suspend for level 1. And if you're, doing it more than a few times, I really think we need to look at ourselves as adults and look at the environment and say, like, what could be changed to help this child be able to, not be disruptive or whatever the thing was, or not be late. I mean, frankly, level 1 has, just so everybody is on the same page, level 1 is tardiness and inappropriate personal property, like a cell phone, clothing, pestering or teasing other students, and especially, kids. That's what they do. That's kid behavior. And, they're going to make mistakes. And I really think that when kids are making mistakes and the adults are not trying to, these are the low level ones. These are like, the bottom of the barrel, misbehavior. For my son, it was you didn't walk in a straight line in the hallway. And I just think that taking away a kid's education for even a day is very serious. And I don't think we set the policy to allow that to happen.
Okay, but the pestering and the teasing, it goes on continuously, no matter what the teacher, the principal, the social worker, et cetera, have tried to implement, and yet it goes on, and it is disrupting class. So now you're not hindering the one student's day of learning, you're hindering a whole class's learning. So is it the one child we're protecting, or are we going to look at the impact to the whole class at this point? And I'm saying, I agree, for truant and for wrong clothing and stuff, I'm not willing to suspend. I'm saying, let's get you here on time. What's the reason? And for clothing, I say have extra clothing in the school and have the child wear it. I've seen teachers, keep a stash of oversized gym clothes. The kids didn't like it, but at least they weren't violating the dress code policy, and more importantly, they weren't missing class.
So if you get suspended for a day,
we're talking about infractions that will distract the learning in the classroom. How long do you let it go on despite all attempts at correcting it before you have to take a stronger step?
If you get suspended for a day, and then you come back and you continue to pester, I mean, here's the problem. You can't say that suspensions fix any behavior. And if you're pestering a kid, and after you do it 3 times, they send you home for a day. So you get to go home and, play on the Xbox, and then you come back the next day and you're still going to do the same thing. So I just don't understand why we are encouraging taking a day away from their education.
Right, we can take
you're going to pester,
a deeper dive.
Dr. Hamlet. Let Dr. Hamlet.
For the example, if we're talking about, again, pestering a child over and over again, that goes into bullying and harassment.
That's right.
We got to look at and be able to articulate if this is what's going on or not. So if it's really that, it should be coded as such based on what we're seeing and what behavior we're seeing in the classroom. Does that make sense? And there's a higher code for that.
That's correct.
Okay, that's okay, because my concern is when it continues, eventually the child or children who are the targets, they're going to act out, and for whatever reason, and then they're the ones who get in trouble when they've been the victim the whole time.
That's correct.
And that's part of my concern is, so if we can't address it with the child that's causing the problem, to the best of our extent, what are we doing to protect the other children? And it gets down to, if you can't, despite every intervention that we do, this child continues to do whatever level 1 infraction, then, I don't know about you, but when raising my kids, if something didn't work, then they got grounded. And if that didn't work, they got a higher level of punishment. And eventually it stuck in. You didn't want to, but you had to. It was a last recourse. And I'm not saying suspension should automatically happen after 3 level 1 repeated offenses of the same level 1 offense. But I'm thinking, depending on what the issue is and what's been attempted, and with parental involvement or guardian involvement, if we haven't been able to even get support, we haven't been able to get any movement in the child correcting the behavior, at what point do the rights of the other students outweigh the right of the one student?
All right, we've had a proposed amendment that's been seconded. There's been some discussion. Is there any further discussion on the amendment?
Yeah, I have a discussion. Ms. Harbin, why did you call my name in the beginning of this?
I didn't say your name.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't say your name.
I thought you said Ms. Falls.
No, ma'am, I didn't.
I'm so glad because I couldn't figure that out. Thank you. Sorry.
All right, if there's no further discussion, can we vote on this amendment?
I have one question.
Oh, okay, go ahead, go ahead.
And this is just for knowledge. Okay, for the level 1 stuff, and do we have like a set interventions for behaviors, or is that like left to the school? You know, like we always throw out that term like, oh yeah, interventions, but like, for example, like we know the tardy thing, there's different ways you can do that, but like for some of these behavior things, do we have like a set program we go through with these interventions? Thank you.
Yes, so there are recommended interventions and there are progressive interventions and disciplinary steps that take place in the classroom as well as at the school level. And it starts with work, reaching out and partnering with students, parents, and guardians. And so for most of the level 1 violations, and if they're repeated, they do not result in an out-of-school suspension. In most cases, interventions are successful, and students respond to the interventions. The idea is to get to the underlying cause of what is creating the behavior, correct it, understand it, so that the behavior doesn't continue.
Okay, any other further questions, discussion on this amendment? Okay, then can I have, Mr. Weiss, do we have to have a roll call vote on the amendment, or can it just be a voice vote?
Roll call.
Roll call?
Yeah, so I'll proceed to call the roll on the amendment as moved and seconded. Mr. Carter,
Yes.
Ms. Edwards,
Yes.
Ms. Falls? Ms. Falls,
I said yes, Mr. Rice.
oh, you were muted. I could not hear you. Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Ms. Harmon,
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy,
No.
Ms. Delafaro,
Yes.
Mr. Udine,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
The amendment is approved, so the original motion, which was to adopt these codes of conduct, will reflect that amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Wilson, I'd like to make one more amendment to 835 Code of Conduct. I'd like to make amendment to a motion to remove 229, I apologize, disorderly conduct from the 6 through 12 Code of Conduct. And yeah, make a motion to remove 229 disorderly conduct.
This is Devin, a second.
All right, do we have action on this item?
Barbara, can you make your explanation, please?
Yes, ma'am. So disorderly conduct, and it actually says it in here that it may result in criminal disorderly conduct charges being filed. Disorderly conduct is one of the most subjective, I believe, things that we code of conduct, and it does land students into the system of arrest. Sometimes it just lands them into the magistrate and sometimes into the real justice system. But disorderly conduct is a adult criminal offense, and it is interpreted or in the adult criminal offense, you could be disorderly for unreasonable noise, for language and gestures. And the disorderly conduct charges that we are giving in our district are disproportionately to Black students and unfortunately disproportionately to Black girls. And I think this is one of the areas where there's lots of subjectivity and frankly racial bias that comes into it about what constitutes a child being disorderly. And I think this is one of the highest used infractions that we give for our students in 6 through 12. And I don't believe we should have anything in our code of conduct that is so subjective. And if we want to put something that is less subjective, then we change the wording to make it more clear on how this is used.
I just want to thank you, Ms. Harbin, for that. I just want to inform the board that disorderly conduct in school that's in the code of conduct doesn't automatically lead to a criminal charge of disorderly conduct according to the criminal code. That is not an automatic occurrence. Disorderly conduct according to the school code of conduct is happens when a child is refusing to be redirected and is creating the potential for a crisis to occur, and that refusing to be redirected is an enormous disruption in a classroom, in a hallway, in an office, and it gives an appropriate code for school action. When it elevates to a criminal charge, that's from the decision of either a school police officer, or if it's happening outside of school, a city police officer. That's not a decision that is made from the teacher or from the administrator. This code allows principals to provide consequences to students that refuse to be redirected and extremely disrupt the environment within the school building. And I won't provide specific examples of what that might look like, but it moves to the extreme.
Oh, Dr. Maystein, thank you. So there's no other code that you could use for making unreasonable noise or using obscene language or gesture, because that is in our book for disorderly conduct, 229. There's 4 different things listed, and making unreasonable noise and using obscene language or an obscene gesture is in that code.
So it's when obscene language or noises are accompanied with other types of behavior that lend itself to the refusing to be redirected, such as turning over chairs and tables, or ripping items off the wall, or engaging in the physical environment in such a physical way. And again, the key here is refusing to be redirected. And when these types of events happen, every effort is made to redirect the child so that the incident is de-escalated.
Thank you.
Refusing to be redirected in that.
So my question then is, walk me through, briefly, what support systems or things that we have in place that could have prevented the extreme actions to occur.
The extreme actions demonstrated by the student.
Yes. So if
So-
we're going to then give the student disorderly conduct for the extreme actions that are listed in these 4 bullet points, what systems, restorative programs do we have in place that could be preventative to prevent that extreme action?
So there are opportunities to speak to ask to speak to your counselor. There are opportunities for students, parents to contact school if there is a brewing problem. There are opportunities for students to go to a cool out spot in the room or ask to speak to an administrator. Often in situations that involve disorderly conduct, it's something that happens very quickly. It's a reaction that is a result of maybe a comment being made, being frustrated because something happened out of school, learning information from a friend that was upsetting. And again, I'm just mentioning a couple examples, but in most of these instances where disorderly conduct is where school action is the result, it's something that is a quick flashpoint where the adults in the classroom or the administrators didn't have enough time to react or respond to de-escalate the child before they got so escalated that it went so far. And again, we are in the process of training all of our administrators and staff in safety care training and de-escalation techniques. But there are times when students demonstrate behavior and refuse to be redirected that leave administrators with progressive disciplinary options based off of the behavior that they're seeing. And so when a student is upset and angry and uses vulgar language towards an adult, and that's accompanied with threatening the adult with vulgar language that is creating the unsafe environment, then that becomes the description of the disorderly conduct. And the disorderly conduct is something that can be used in working with parents and guardians to help understand how we don't get in this situation again. Consequences for students aren't just for punitive reasons. We have a code of conduct to have parameters in place for students to understand what their rights are, what they can and what they can't do. And if mistakes are made, there are consequences that go along with mistakes. This is part of how we try to get children to make good decisions, to let them know what the parameters are that they have to stay within. And when students are stepping out of those parameters because of being upset and they're refusing to be redirected at that moment, then it becomes a learning opportunity through intervention, through collaboration with the home, and through a school consequence. We try to name it accurately through the code of conduct.
Madam President, may I speak?
Go ahead.
Okay, I have what I believe is the legal definition of disorderly conduct, and I think everybody should hear it to understand the context from a legal point of view, whether or not you agree with what's in the code of conduct. And what it's saying is, as defined, a person is guilty of disorderly conduct if, with intent to cause public inconvenience, annoyance, or alarm, or recklessly creating a risk thereof, he engages in fighting or threatening or in violent or tumultuous behavior. Number 2, makes unreasonable noise. 3, uses obscene language or makes an obscene gesture. Or 4, creates a hazardous or physically offensive condition by any act which serves no legitimate purpose of the actor. And I've been led to believe that that is the legal definition of disorderly conduct. Like I say, whether or not you agree with what's in the code of conduct, I think people need to understand, the difference between legal versus what we're trying to define. Thank you.
I think too, we're not talking about, I know what Ms. Harbin said when she made this, but really, we're not talking about disorderly conduct actually leading to someone being charged in the legal system. I mean, I was in elementary school for 26 years and had a lot of kids that had been suspended for disorder because of the fighting or disruptions, and none of them ever led to anything, to juvenile court or anything. The point is that we're not looking at the legal definition for someone that it starts some kind of legal action that would lead to court. We're not talking about that. We're talking about in school. And like Mr. David May Stein said, the Code of Student Conduct is a teaching tool. It does tell you what consequences are, but if you haven't used them to teach in your classroom so that kids understand it, then it's not any good doing it anyway. But the teacher,
Ms. Wilson?
yes.
Thank you so much. And in many cases, most cases, a school charge through the code of conduct does not lead to a criminal charge, but the definition of disorderly conduct, I'll share it and read it. A student shall not, with intent to cause public inconvenience, annoyance, or alarm, or recklessly creating a risk thereof, engage in fighting or threatening or in violent tumultuous behavior, make unreasonable noise, use obscene language or make obscene gesture, create a hazardous or physically offensive condition by any act which serves no legitimate purpose. Violation of this rule, including fighting, may result in criminal disorderly conduct charges being filed with the local magistrate. The principals and school-based administrators do everything they can to de-escalate and not charge students with criminal charges.
Yeah, if I could just say, Terry, you just read.
Can you put the hand
you
up?
just read-
Point
Terry,
of
you
order,
just
Ms.
read
Wilson?
criminal
Hello.
code.
See, I can't see your hand, Miss. Is that Mr. Udine? I can't see your hand.
Can I just say that Terry read the criminal code, and then David read what's in our code of conduct, and we've taken the criminal code and put it in our code of conduct, and I'm not sure we want to have an adult criminal code in our code of conduct for children. That's the point that I've been trying to make.
All right, thank you. Mr. Udine, I think that's you trying to be recognized.
Is there a way that you can see when I light up the raised hand?
Sometimes if you just, the symbol raised hand, I don't have on mine. Sometimes.
Who can see it? Somebody needs to be able to see it.
Yeah, somebody should be watching. Sometimes if you're on a video and I see you, but I don't see everybody. I only see a few people right now, so I don't see everybody. So, but go ahead and make your point, Mr.
One of the points that is relevant here, I think, has to do with the data. We're making policy decisions in the blind, and we don't know the historical data of how this policy can be used or subjectively used by some frustrated adult. And so I think we first of all need to have all of the data that shows us what has been the the practice and the incidence of student conduct that requires us to include it in this policy. And without that data, I don't understand how we can include these policies. Secondly, I think that we need to spell out what kind of behaviors fall into 3 different levels, like a low level, a medium level, and a high level, and not allow that to be subjectively interpreted by the school personnel. Some of these things are disruptive and dangerous, and some of them are not. And I don't want to leave it up to subjective adults to be able to put all behavior into one serious category. So we need the data, historical data, and we need levels of disruption, low level, medium level, and high level.
Thank you, Mr. Udine. I can tell you for this past year up through March 13th, there were 799 disorderly conduct school code violations. And out of the 799, 133 ended in anywhere between a 1 to 3 day suspension. We can get a further breakdown of how many 1 day, how many 2 day, and how many 3 day suspensions came out of that. But that data I don't have at this moment. But just from an initial look at that data, the vast majority of the code violations result in an intervention other than an out-of-school suspension. Which
That's the kind of data we need to have. We need to have it in writing, and we need to have it before we are asked to make an important policy vote.
I'd just like to say that the data that I received on the arrests for the last 5 years, we averaged 37% of all of our arrests for disorderly conduct. So I really think that having this code in the code of conduct, and it's written exactly as it is from the criminal charge, is what we plucked it out of the criminal charge and just put it in our code of conduct. And I think that's a mistake. And I agree with you, Mr. Udine, that, you know, if we take out unreasonable noise and obscene language, and it's just a serious thing, it's too subjective. Disorderly conduct has been way overused to criminalize students, not just in Pittsburgh Public Schools, but everywhere. And I really feel like this would be a really big step in reducing the criminalization of our students.
When we can review that with legal, Ms. Harbin, when we, again, just when we talk about the overall changes to the code of conduct for the 2020-2021 school year, part of our presentation included that it would not include a major overhaul due to COVID-19 and the challenges that COVID-19 was presenting. When we look at the revisions for the 2021-22 school year, we had discussed with the committee that the larger committee that we would pull that committee back together and we would consider additional more significant changes to the code of conduct where we would have more time to do the type of data analysis that you and Mr. Udine are recommending, and that we also agree that more data analysis of the specific codes to be reviewed. But when we're looking at this level of overhaul, we just needed the time and the presence together and the ability to work together as a team to bring forward recommendations that support students and families and schools and classrooms so that everybody understands what their rights are, everybody understands what the expectations are, and how to make school work for them. We just need more time to do that level of an overhaul.
Then we need to approve this amendment until we have that time and we have that data.
Move the call question.
All right, the question has been called, so it's time to vote. Mr. Weiss, you indicated before this has to be a roll call.
Weiss, what are we voting on? We're voting to amend?
It's on the amendment as proposed, and it has been moved and seconded to remove 229 disorderly conduct from the 6 to 12.
Thank you.
And when question is called, the discussion ends. That's why I called for Mr. Weiss to go ahead with the roll call vote.
But somebody has to repeat what we're voting on so we know.
On item 8.35, Ms. Harbin has proposed to remove 229, referring to disorderly conduct for 6 to 12, and Ms. Telefaro seconded. That's what her amendment was.
Thank you.
Certainly. Mr. Weiss?
You're on mute.
Carter? Mr. Carter?
Yes. I vote.
Ms. Edwards?
No.
Ms. Falls?
No.
Is that no, Ms. Falls?
No.
Mr. Gallagher?
No.
Ms. Harbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy?
No.
Ms. Telefaro?
Yes.
Mr. Dean?
Yeah, yes.
Ms. Wilson?
No.
Here's the amendment's been approved. 5-4. I have Carter, Harbin, Telefaro, Dean, and Wilson voting yes. Is that
I
correct?
didn't vote yes. I didn't vote yes.
I'm sorry. I'm working off an old sheet here that I'm trying to hand right. Okay, the motion is defeated 4-5. So the code of conduct is now before the board with the First Amendment approved and the Second Amendment refused.
Thank you. I have one more amendment, Ms. Wilson.
Go ahead.
This policy number 218, suspension and expulsion. I make a motion to change the guidelines for the informal hearing to be held within 3 days instead of within 5 days.
Can I make a amendment to the amendment?
This is an
maybe,
amendment.
Yeah,
Ms.
but I would
Kennedy,
like to, before we get it, I'm sorry, I just want to change a little bit of the wording.
Well,
I think
it
should
hasn't been seconded.
Okay,
The amendment has to be seconded.
I'll second
Second.
it.
Second.
All right.
And now I'd like to add an amendment to the amendment to make it 3 days unless the parent or guardian decline, needs more than 3 days. Because that seems to be the problem in a lot of cases, but I think it should be, the reason I'm saying it's, we'd have to give that exception is what happens if the parent or guardian can't do it in 3 days? So I think we have to make ourselves available within 3 days, but given an accommodation if the parent or guardian can't do it within 3 days.
Is there a second to that amendment, which is the amendment to the amendment, adding that language?
Second.
So I guess we have to vote on the amendment to the amendment.
We have people who made the amendment give the defense of why they're making the amendment.
It's good because if you can create all this calamity.
If I could just say, Terry, I mean, I understand what you're trying to say. So let me just explain what the issue is. We require right now, when a student is suspended for more than 3 days, that we hold an informal hearing at the school. And what happens after the 3rd day, the student stays home for the first 3 days of the suspension. And then after the 3rd day, they have to go to the Student Achievement Center. So we have a situation where you didn't get a hearing scheduled till the 5th day. So the 4th and the 5th day, a child that lives on the West End has to come all the way to the Student Achievement Center on the East End, and they're not provided transportation, so they choose not to go. So on day 4 and day 5 of their suspension, they're at home. Or another thing that happens is they actually get to the Student Achievement Center and the work didn't get there yet. And I think the clearest thing to do is to have the hearing within 3 days, because they're home for 3 days. They get to come in, they have their informal hearing, they can present their case, they win their case, they're back in school on the 4th day. I understand, Ms. Kennedy, you're thinking that, you know, if a parent can't show up, but I'd like to ask Mr. Weiss, if a parent, I mean, if we change it to 3 days and a parent's like, look, I can't do it within 3 days, I do believe if we have documentation, we're covered. I'm worried that if we change it to 3 days, or if the parent can't do it 5, that we're going to have a lot of, oh, the parent couldn't do it, that's why we did it in 5, and we're going to have to monitor that.
Well, I would say this. First of all, the regulations at the state level permit 5. As far as how it's administratively handled, I mean, I think there's a way to document when a parent requests more time. I mean, this is not an unusual problem. Many districts have documentation for this. If the board wishes to make it 3, and the board is inclined to agree with Ms. Kennedy's amendment that it can be extended to 5 upon parental request, I think documenting the request should not be a complicated thing.
Miss Wilson, may I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Mr. Weiss, why can't you say recommended 3, but no more than 5? I mean, I'm just asking, I don't know, it seems like we're mincing over words.
The regulations allow 5.
I think
what Ms. Harbin's amendment is providing it has to be 3. Mrs. Kennedy has stated request an extension, it can be up to 5. I mean, I don't recommend having a sliding number of days, because then I do think you get into the problem of who requested what. So I think it either needs to be 3 days as proposed by Ms. Harbin, or if the board's inclined to give the ability of parents to request an additional 2 days.
Can I just, real quick, I know that there are other school districts like Woodland Hills, and I think maybe North Hills or North Allegheny have it in 3. I mean, I honestly believe within 3 days is reasonable, and with technology and the opportunity to do maybe a conference call or a video call, if you are not able to, get there right away, I think could solve some of those issues about taking time off, because I know that is difficult. But I also know from experience that what happens often is the loss of learning that occurs if student can't make it to the Student Achievement Center, if their work never arrived. I had a student who was sent to the Student Achievement Center. The school never sent her work. And so she was sent home for multiple days. And so she did not get education for almost 3 weeks as a result of mistakes that were made at the school level. And so I think if we can keep students in school as much as possible, I understand there might be consequences that have to be had for actions, but I mean, the more that we can keep our students in school and learning, the better. And if it's a matter of 3 days versus 5 days, I vote for the 3.
Can I
I
ask a
think the
question?
policy ought to push people toward a shorter period of time when the students are out of school. 3 days does that. 5 days just adds to the extension of time that kids are out of school. There's no reason why we should add more time.
Okay, can I ask some questions? Because it was my understanding that that a lot of the hearings that occur 4 or 5 days, it's because of the parents and guardians, not the district. So my question is, for the parents or guardians that are maybe service employees, so they get these schedules on a weekly or 2 weekly basis, and they can't use their phone except for on their breaks, and they can't take off on short notice without calling off sick or whatnot, without risking being fired. So how are, I agree with Ms. Talaferro that we have options for, doing conference calls and stuff. How amenable is the district to scheduling these hearings around the parent or guardian schedule? And if necessary, in the evening, if the parent has to be at work all day? Because while I agree, we don't want the child to miss any more school than necessary. I don't want to have this so hamstrung that a parent or guardian has to choose between being fired from work or and we know that some jobs will fire you for the least offenses, but versus being at this important meeting for their child. So can we hold some of these hearings and schedule them around these work schedules that the parents can't control, the parents and guardians?
If I can just make a statement, if it's 3 days and a parent requests additional time, then that operates as a waiver of the 3 days. So, and that happens in many districts. So if the parent, assuming the board would move this to 3 days and assuming a parent couldn't come in within those 3 days and request additional time, then that constitutes a waiver. I mean, I would only add, and I'll defer to the administration on this, but it strikes me that having these kind of hearings in the evening presents significant problems for the administration and possibly some teachers.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make it easy, because we want the parents involved. I don't want someone getting fired over trying to do right by their child. And we all understand when you work in the service industry, a lot of the times the management is not kind to the employees with respect to time off on short notice or anything else. And the last thing I want to do is cause loss of money into the household. But on the other hand, if you're telling me that this waiver is essentially occurs if the parent requests an extension, then we don't need my amendment, and then I can agree 100% with Ms. Harbin's motion as stood. So I withdraw my amendment. Thank you.
I just want to add a point of clarification that for many informal hearings, they're held on the same day of the infraction because parents are called and they come right up to the school. There are many, many times when the informal hearings are held before 3 days. As we discussed before, the 5 days that are in the code as well as in the state code allow for parents to make arrangements for the very conversation that we're having so that it doesn't negatively impact their work or their employment. And in many cases, parents aren't able to make an appointment within a 3-day period of time. All that does is allow schools to work out a mutually beneficial date with the parent. Schools, as a matter of course, schedule these meetings for as soon as possible. For the instances that I've heard where work wasn't provided to the Student Achievement Center, we will follow up with school administrators to review routines and protocols to make sure that those instances don't occur. Again, more support to school-based teams and administrators and teachers at the Student Achievement Center are certainly well at hand. But the 5 days is designed to give allowance to parents to be able to have enough time to schedule the informal hearing.
As I stated, parent needs more time, they can request more time. Mrs. Kennedy is withdrawing her amendment, so the amendment before the board is reducing the 5-day to 3-day.
I have a question.
Okay, go
Ms.
ahead.
Wilson.
Go ahead.
We're gonna be a one-to-one, one-to-one school district when the kids go back to school, right? Everybody's gonna have their own device.
Yes.
Okay, so I think what's gonna be really huge, I'd go with the 3 days, because if the kid does get sent to the Student Achievement Center, they have their laptop, it'll be a lot easier than the whole rigmarole of teachers trying to find a book, writing an assignment, stick it in the counselor's mailbox. I think we're going to be fine just to eliminate a lot of problems with this being a one-to-one district.
All right, seeing any other hands, so I think it's Mr. Weiss, you can go ahead and do the roll call on this amendment.
This is a roll call reducing the 5-day for the informal hearing to 3-day. Mr. Carter,
Yes.
Ms. Edwards,
Yes.
Ms. Falls,
Yes.
Gallagher,
Yes.
Ms. Harbin,
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy,
Yes,
Ms. Delafarrow,
Yes.
Mr. Dean,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes,
Can I just I'm done with my motions. I just want to make one statement that moving it to 3 days is also in the code of conduct. So it needs to be changed in the code of conduct as well. It's in the code of conduct in many places under the informal hearing section. So it would need to be changed in the code of conduct as well to follow the policy.
Thank you, Ms. Harbin.
Because we now have the original motion, which is the
yes,
which is
yes,
the code of conduct with these two approved amendments.
that's correct.
no. This was an amendment on policy 218, not, which is in 833, the suspension to expulsion policy. But I'd like to make an amendment to the code of conduct saying that we make the appropriate changes in the code of conduct to align with the amendment that we just approved and for policy 218. Because rather than say we're going to approve the code of conduct and these changes can be made, I think because the wording in the code of conduct as it exists at this minute doesn't align with this. So anyhow, so my amendment is to change any references in the code of conduct from for the informal hearing from 5 days to 3 days, wherever it appears.
Isn't that just an editorial change that you wouldn't necessarily have to do a whole amendment? It's just an editorial change, and we agree that that has to be corrected?
I think if the motion's approved, the direction of the board make all necessary editorial changes to conform with the amendments.
So you're agreeing with Ms. Wilson? Is that what I'm hearing, Mr. White?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Then I withdraw my amendment.
I mean, I agree with you that there has to be a change, but I think it could be incorporated into the motion without having an amendment.
Okay, so we've already moved and seconded. So should we redo the motion in the second for
I
the
think
whole
like
report
the-
on education?
The minutes will reflect the statement of the chair as being part of the motion. And all necessary editorial changes be made to the code of conduct to reflect the amendments that have been approved. We have a roll call on the code of conduct. And Mr. Carter,
Yes.
Ms. Edwards,
Yes.
Ms. Falls,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Ms. Harbin,
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy,
yes,
Ms. Salafaro,
Yes.
Mr. Dean,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Okay, so we're back to the education report. And I would point out to the board that tab 8.23 is the approval resolution for new academy charter renewal. And tab 8.24 is the approval resolution for Provident. If there's a motion made on these to approve these, I will have an addition to the motion, but I'll await the direction of the board as to whether they're going to move to approve these, and then I'll add that language.
point of clarification, Madam Chair,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
the attachments to each of these, board items have both resolutions to renew and not to renew. So how are we knowing how we're voting on them?
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we present motions to renew for each of them? And then I'll add this language, and if that motion is, those motions are not approved, if that is not approved, then I will ask for a companion motion to deny them to make the record clear. But let's approach this, that we'll vote on these 823 and 824 to approve them. And then I'll add this language, which I'll read now. To each of these board tabs, we add the language that the solicitor directed to negotiate appropriate conditions in the charter agreement, subject to board review prior to execution of any charter agreement. So if these are approved, that language will be part of the board action.
Are we voting on these separately or one?
Yes. It's being voted separately, Mr. Udine.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Yara, can you repeat the changes or the update?
The way that's going to be presented for clarity is that these in the education report that you'll vote on, these will be motions to approve these charter renewals separately with the following language: with the solicitor directed to negotiate appropriate conditions in the charter agreement, subject to board review prior to execution of the new charter agreement.
Thank you.
Good.
I was going to say, any further discussion on these two items?
I thought we were discussing them one at a time.
Yeah, I'm just asking if there's any discussion on either of them. I'm not asking for a vote. I'm just asking if there was any discussion on either. All right, then I'm not hearing anything. Then, Mr. Weiss, should we be voting on these separately from the overall education committee? Or having no additional questions, just a part of the whole education
I think
committee?
it's part of the whole. If someone wants to vote differently on them, they can so indicate like they usually do.
Okay, all right, so we're voting on the whole committee, education committee report with those items that have been already amended. And if anyone has any objections, you just approve the report as a whole, and then you would say no to items such and such. So that's our normal way. And if we have no further discussion, then I think that we are ready for a vote. Mr. Weiss?
Carter,
Yes.
Ms. Edwards,
Yes.
Ms. Falls,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Ms. Harbin,
Yes on the report as a whole, no on 8.24.
Ms. Kennedy,
yes,
Ms. Talaferro,
Yes.
Mr. Dean,
Point of clarification, is 8.24, which school is that?
824 is Provident, 823 is New Academy.
A vote? Yes on both.
Thank you. Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Okay, the report's approved, 9-0. Tab 824 is approved 8-1 with the language I read into the minutes. Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. All right, we are now going to move on to the committee report on business and finance that is before you, which was submitted by Mr. Kevin Carter, the chairperson of his committee. The report includes agenda items 9.01 through 12.04. There were no items pulled for further discussion at agenda review. Are there any questions or comments on the committee report on business and finance at this time that were not answered at agenda review? All right, I'm not hearing anything, so can I have a motion and a second to?
Excuse me, I apologize.
Go ahead.
Say those numbers again.
It's numbers of the items are 9.01 through 12.04.
12.03. Okay. Mr. Weiss, do I have to make any comment on this on 12.03?
Well, I mean, the item is the rules of governance. Frankly, my recollection is the board has approved this or similar kinds of rules before.
Okay, I just wanted to do my due diligence if I had to make any comments, but that's fine.
I think they're self-explanatory. They're
Okay.
best practices for boards.
Okay.
So I
Thank you.
think
Okay,
they sort of speak for themselves. Thanks.
thank
Ms.
you.
Ball.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Okay. May I have a motion and a second to approve this report?
I'm sorry, I had a question.
So moved.
Oh, you have
Yeah, I
a
just
question? Go
want-
ahead, Ms. Harmon.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, 12.03 is the, whatever you just said, but is not the platform, right?
Right.
So we're not voting on, okay,
That may be brought up in new business, Ms. Harvard, but that's not part of this.
I get it. Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, again, I asked for a motion and a second to approve this report.
So moved.
so moved,
Okay, it sounded like Ms. Falls and Ms. Kennedy, am I correct?
yes,
Correct.
Okay, Mr. Weiss, may we have a roll call on this vote, please?
Carter,
Yes.
Ms. Edwards, Ms. Edwards,
Yes.
thank you. Ms. Falls,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Ms. Harbin,
Yes,
Ms. Kennedy,
yes,
Talaferro,
Yes on the report as a whole, no on item 10.05.
10 what?
10.05.
Thank you. Mr. Udine, Mr. Udine,
Yes.
thank you. Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
report's approved 9-0. 10.05 is approved 8-1.
All right, thank you, Mr. Weiss.
Point of order.
Go ahead, Mr. Udine.
I have a question for the solicitor. At what time is it appropriate for me to inquire about the governor's guidance on meeting in person and when we can decide to resume board meetings and committee meetings in person?
I would suggest that it be brought up following new business when board members can make comments or ask questions.
Ms. Wilson, will you let us know at that time?
There actually has been discussion that we will open up again and resume meetings in August. That's the school district's plan in August.
Is there some discussion about that can be held?
We can, I guess we can do this at the end then. But that was so far as in August. But we can wait until we get finished with the rest of the legislative report.
Thank you.
Certainly. All right, we're now moving to the Human Resources Report, item 13.01. That includes addendums A, B, and C, which has been submitted by Mr. Bill Gallagher, the chairperson in his committee. Are there any questions or comments on this report?
Madam Chair, I have one comment.
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to let everyone know that I need to abstain on Section K, full-time substitutes release, item 42, Sarah Kennedy, because she's my daughter. Thank you.
Thank you.
And also, this is Veronica. I need to abstain on Section K, number 16, and I'm abstaining because that's my daughter.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on this report? All right, hearing none, may I have a motion and a second to approve the Human Resources Report?
So moved.
That's Ms. Teleferro,
Second, Terry.
Ms. Kennedy. All right. All right, Mr. Weiss, can we have a roll call vote now, please?
And the abstentions are noted in the minutes. Mr. Carter? Mr. Carter? Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Ms. Falls?
Yes.
Yeah.
What was that?
Yes.
Ms. Harbin? Mrs. Kennedy?
Yes, with, I'm guessing I don't have to make the abstention since you've already said it's already noted.
The abstentions by you and Ms. Edwards will be noted in the minutes.
Okay, so then I'm yes on the rest of it. Thank you.
Ms. Talaferro?
Yes.
Mr. Dean?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Carter? Okay, the report's approved. If Mr. Carter is able to get through, we'll take his vote. So the report's
Okay.
approved.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. We're going to move on now to 15.01, the special education budget. Are there any?
Yeah, I just saw Kevin Carter voted yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. We're moving on to 15.01. Any questions or comments on this special education budget? All right, then I need a motion and a second to approve this, please.
So moved. Terry.
Second.
That's Mrs. Kennedy and Miss Edwards. All right, Mr. Weiss, a roll call vote, please.
Carter?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards,
Yes.
Ms. Falls,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Harmon,
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy, Ms. Delafaro,
Yes.
Mr. Dean,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Special ed budget's approved.
All right, thank you, Mr. Weiss. The next item is 15.02, the Act One Index. Are there any questions or comments on this? Again, hearing nothing, no comments or questions. May I have a motion and a second to approve item 15.02?
Terry, so moved.
Was that Ms. Falls?
No, it was Ms. Falls.
Kevin Carter.
Oh, Kevin Carter. Give it to Kevin. Give
Anybody?
it to Kevin. Give it to
Mr.
Kevin.
Carter. Sorry, Mr. Carter. All right, may we, Mr. Weiss, a roll call vote, please, on item 15.02.
Mr. Carter,
Yes.
Ms. Edwards,
Yes.
Ms. Falls,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Harmon,
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy,
Yes.
Delafaro, Delafaro,
Yes.
thank you. Mr. Dean,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes. Yes.
Report's approved.
All right, we're going to move on to item 15.03, the homestead farmstead exclusion. Are there any questions or comments on this? All right, here, nothing there. Could I have a motion and a second to approve this item?
Terry, so moved.
Second.
And Ms. Falls, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Mr. Weiss, a roll call vote on 15.03.
Mr. Carter,
Yes.
Ms. Edwards, Ms. Edwards,
Yes.
Ms. Falls,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher, Gallagher,
Yes.
Ms. Harmon,
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy,
Yes.
Delafaro,
Yes.
Mr. Dean,
Yes.
Yes.
item's approved.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Weiss. All right, items 16.01 and 16.02, the financial statements and controllers reports for the month ending May 31st, 2020 are before you this evening. Are there any questions or comments on them? All right, we will now move to items.
Ms. Wilson,
Go ahead.
can I ask Mr. Joseph a question, please?
Yes, you may.
Is there any new information that has come down from the state level that isn't incorporated here, or would be nice for us and the public to know?
Could you repeat that question?
My question was, I was just wondering if there's any wonderful good information that you can share with us that come down from the governor's office that maybe we're not aware of, that's going to make us happy?
No, there is actually no new information regarding the budget. As you know, the budget was passed earlier, and it keeps us level funded. It's a stopgap budget that keeps us level funded to what we were last year. That's basically the information that we have right now, is in terms of what's coming out from the governor. They've settled that budget, so education's fully funded.
after the election, so we'll probably come back and look at the remainder of the budget, but there'll be information on that in terms of the state budget.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Thank you. All right, we're moving to item 16.03, the EBE report for June 2020, which is also before you this evening. Are there any questions or comments on this report? Did I hear someone wanting to ask a question? All right, I guess not. All right, let me ask this. I'm going to ask a question. Do we have an item for 17.01? Do we have a new business item 17.01? Yes or no?
Mr. Weiss has informed me that I have one, but I'm not sure the existing one doesn't go first.
Well, there is one after this, but we have this before us now, so I'll address when Ms. Falls is addressing when we're done with this.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, 17.01, it's a resolution, reimagine school safety in Pittsburgh Public Schools. All right, I'm passing this on. Who is going to talk about it?
This is Devin. So I want to start by thanking my fellow board colleagues in administration and our legal department for just for everything through this process, especially over the last few weeks. And as we spent 2 days listening to many, many comments, concerns, there have been many conversations about what is going on in our country as it relates to Black and Brown people. And I would not be here today if it were not for my passion and desire to make sure that we and I do everything in my power and ability as a board member to make sure that our students are safe, healthy, and educated. I can't imagine anybody deciding to sit on school board and work hard for free if we did not care about the future of our children. So with that, I would like to introduce the resolution that is before you, written by myself and Ms. Harbin with the advisement of Attorney Weiss and other administration and support of other administration staff. I believe that it's time and it's appropriate to have this conversation as we are talking about how we want to reimagine Pittsburgh Public School District and how we want to change the way that we deliver education to our students. I think it's also appropriate that we have the conversation, or that we even add to the conversation, how we can reimagine how we provide school safety. This is important to me. I know that it's important to Ms. Harbin, and it's important to many people who we've heard and have had conversations with. I had the unique privilege of being able to work with inside of Pittsburgh Public School buildings as an outside organization representative and work with students. And I believe that there is data and there's information. And a lot of people often talk about transparency in the district, being transparent. And I think it's time that we really do what it takes to make sure that we are able to provide transparent data and information about areas in which relate to our students, as well as to be able to open up for a community conversation. And so I'm happy to put forth this resolution today to be able to start that conversation and truly reimagine how we deliver school safety to our students, staff, and the community.
Ms. Wilson?
Thank you. Okay, yes.
Okay, first, I think it's very appropriate that, the rest of the administration and the public are aware that we were just given this resolution 5 minutes before our 2 o'clock meeting. So unless somebody else had privy to this resolution, I have not read it at all, just the heading. And I do believe other people on the board have said the same. So I am sure no, I am not speaking for anybody else but myself. I will sit down and I will have conversations with anyone about what will help our students. But the 3-page resolution here, I will go over it. There may or may not be words that I may not agree with, or phrases, or whatever the case may be. But no, because I don't want it to come back that there were board members who were against this, that we just got it 5 minutes before our meeting. And so I will gratefully read this and have any participation and reflect my thoughts on this, and always putting our students first. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Ms. Wilson? Hello, Ms. Wilson?
I was on mute, sorry. I said, go ahead.
This actually is the issue that I wanted to raise in conjunction with the question of in-person meetings. Can I raise it now?
Whoops. Go ahead, Mr. Udine.
We had the benefit of an initial preliminary discussion of this subject at our executive session. I think it is obvious from the heat generated in this discussion that it is better for an in-person discussion of this wide-ranging subject than to try to do it virtually. I would let the board know that I was able to be heard for the first 10 minutes of the discussion. And then after that, I guess I was put on permanent mute because I tried many times to join in the conversation and was unable to get through. So I think unless there is some prohibition against in-person meetings, then that the governor has included in putting us into the green zone, I think we need to find a way to meet in person to discuss this subject. It is very important. It can be very inflammatory. A lot of people have a lot of passion connected to it, including me. And I would rather have the benefit of an in-person meeting rather than a virtual meeting to discuss this subject. And so I'd like to know from the solicitor whether or not your interpretation of the governor's coronavirus pandemic guidelines prohibit in-person meeting by groups the size of our board.
It does not prohibit meetings. The guidance from the governor, which is largely the guidance from the Center for Disease Control, speaks of social distancing and masks if you're having meetings. There's also the guidance that it should not be more than 250 people at a meeting, which in this case doesn't apply. So there's no prohibition against it. There may be some members who, for personal reasons based upon physician's advice, would have issues attending a meeting. The board may wish to consider giving some members the option of doing it remotely, but the answer to your question is there are no legal prohibitions against meetings of boards. The guidance is you wear a mask and you social distance.
If we were to meet in the large conference room where we generally have our legislative meetings, it's large enough for us to have appropriate social distance, and we were to meet with masks on, what dangers do you suggest might be involved?
That would be a legal meeting. It would have to be a public meeting. So you would have the challenge of having a you could have, and I would assume from the response at the public hearings the last 2 days, there would be a large number of people who want to attend that meeting. That would be a challenge in terms of having, even though it'll be under 250, you could have folks in there that would not possibly be able to get in. You may have to talk about having some kind of a remote location where they could view it on a screen that had been done before when the physical capacity of that room is exceeded. Those sorts of issues, but those are logistical issues. The basic question of whether you can meet in person is you can. There's no legal prohibition against it.
Is there a way we can get additional medical guidance as to how to conduct a meeting? I hear you saying that we really cannot meet in closed session. It has to be an open meeting, and that open meeting could be as large as 250 people. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I don't know that it could be that large, but given the degree of interest as evidenced by the recent public hearing, I don't think it's unreasonable to believe you could get a lot of folks. I mean, the guidance that we've gotten is incorporated in the governor's green announcement, which is that people should wear masks and social distance, and that gatherings of more than 250 people should not be held. That's the guidance. I mean, the board can certainly seek other medical input, but that's the guidance is governing whatever what everyone is doing right now. I mean,
I would say,
there are boards that are meeting
oops,
live, and they are making provision for those who want to participate remotely.
Mr. Weiss, it seems to me that conference room A, there's no way we could get 250 people in there because you'd never have the spacing. It's possible that we could be spread out as board members all over and spread out far enough, but then it would have to be same kind of situation now where it's being viewed virtually by everybody else, because you just would never be able to get that many people, and it's just not enough space in that room.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, in my years with the board, we've had meetings there, public hearings or other types of hearings on school closings where that room was full and it holds about 80 people or so. And
Right.
clearly under the current guidelines, you couldn't get probably a third of that many in there with the proper spacing.
Right.
And may I add something? Also, the folks that help film the meetings and our stenographer and everybody else, it's not just the board members and the administration members that have to be there. And while we may be able to sit 6 feet apart, will the folks who film the meeting be able to be 6 feet from everybody, the closest person? And are we going to all be responsible for bringing our own disinfectant wipes to wipe down anything that we touch with our own hand? And how do we disinfect all the mics and all that stuff? I mean, it's more logistics than how many people fit in the room. And because the last thing I want to do is make any employee feel where I'm endangering their health by having a meeting in person. And if we can do it without endangering any employee health and work out these other logistics, I think we should look into it. But I don't want to cause any health problems for an employee who doesn't want to be put in a hard spot.
Okay, any further discussion on this or 17.01?
Actually, I did have a discussion on 17.01. I wanted to agree with everything Ms. Fall said, that I too have not had time to thoroughly read it, given when it arrived. And I too will review it after this meeting and, you know, create my own comments. And people know I always have comments. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to add, obviously, this is a lot of discussion to take place, and it is not going to be voted on today because people haven't had a chance to read it. Plus, we all have lots of thoughts about this. So at least we're introducing it today. We know that it's there. We know that it's something that we will bring, have a lot more discussion on before it's finally voted on. Anyone?
Yeah, this is Ms. Fox. I don't want to reiterate something that I've been saying all along, but I wish that I could agree with Mr. Udine, and I understand the principles of it. But due to health reasons, I don't predict to be back in the building for quite some time.
I think I heard you say that already, so we understand. We understand. We understand. We understand. Miss Edwards, are you trying to chime in, Miss Edwards?
I am. My hand is raised.
Can't see it. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I also want to say that I'm on the safety committee, and I too just got this 5 minutes ago. So there was no input. And it was a very grueling, demanding, and stressful week, all because information that was going out was incorrect, wrong, and not followed through. So we can take a look at this and see what's best for our school district as a whole. I'm willing to do that. But at this point right here, I have not had a chance to review it. So I join Mr. Udine, Sala, also Ms. Falls, and everybody else. It's time to take a look at it, but not tonight. Thank you.
Okay, I hear another voice. Go ahead.
Ms. Harbin, thank you. I just wanted to say that this resolution, like there's confusion because it was at the last minute. This resolution was never meant to be voted on tonight. We brought it to the board in executive session, and it was meant to be on the public agenda tonight so that we could start a public conversation. And there was a lot of misinformation, but at the end of the day, this is a subject that must be discussed. It's being discussed all around the country, which puts us in, you know, having a great opportunity that we should take to discuss, you know, what it looks like in our schools, because it is the most serious thing that can happen to a child is to get arrested and to have charges against them. So this resolution, the next steps, just so everybody is clear, the resolution was created by 2 board members, and as a board member, you have a forth any legislation you want in the form of a resolution. We brought it forth to put on the agenda tonight so everybody can read it at the same time. There's nothing controversial in here. It really is just to ask for the data to be public, which I don't think we could really have a legitimate conversation on any policy and practice changes unless you are starting from the same point. So, you know, what is actually happening? Who is being arrested? Who is getting referred to police and why? You know, what charges are brought and why? So this gives us the opportunity to do that. The resolution also calls for a community task force, which is majority community led, because the people that are impacted by this are the community, which are students and their families. So I think, having a conversation about what school safety should look like and what does school safety mean. I welcome anybody's changes or additions. It wasn't meant to be voted on tonight, like I said. So anything that is part of the conversation, I mean, frankly, we made changes up until the last minute because we listened to, over 100 testimonies. And that was really important to incorporate what we heard into this resolution. So, timing wise, this is just how it happened. So I believe that as a board, we can be courageous and have this conversation. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy to discuss, some practices that may not be done the right way. I mean, we really need to take a serious look at ourselves and see how, all the policies and practices come together. But this is a time where there is no way that we can say that we are going to be comfortable and let systems that have been in place, oppressive systems for Black, brown, and disabled students, there is no way, there's no way that I am willing to sit back and say that I'm going to allow these systems to continue to occur without trying to disrupt them and to transform the systems. And I don't believe it's time for small changes. I believe it's time for transformational changes and, deep thinking about what we can do differently. And that's what I think that this resolution brings. And I look forward to having this conversation with the board, with administration, with our principals in our schools, with our teachers, with all of our staff, with community members. I mean, this is very important, and it's a conversation that has to happen. And I look forward to having it over the next few months. If we choose to vote on this in July, we do. If we choose to vote on it in August, we do, but it wasn't meant to be voted on tonight, and I just wanted that to be clear.
Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, Ms. Wilson, I just want to make a comment. Ms. Harvin, I heard what you said and I agree, but I would also like to remind you that several times through what you just said, it was I, and I is not a team. And I'm not getting that feeling of team. So I'm asking you to reach out and let's have some team playing going on here. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Okie doke.
I had a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Udine. Mr. Udine, and then Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you.
Certainly.
All of this, all of these points of safety require substantial data. And I need to know from the makers of the resolution and perhaps from the President Wilson, how we're going to proceed, how we're going to get the data that we need to have an intelligent discussion. I don't want to wait until the end of the process to get the data. We need the data to inform our participation in this discussion. And I need to request of the superintendent that we get from him a more robust, thoroughgoing position paper on where he stands on this issue and how he sees it being implemented. During the discussion, the superintendent gave a one-sentence summary of his position. I need to know a more fully developed position that the superintendent supports relative to safety. One last thing I need to inquire of the resolution makers. There is a safety committee. I need to know whether or not the safety committee was involved in your discussions and the development of the resolution, or do you plan to move this resolution to the safety committee so that it could be presented by the safety committee? What should be the role of the safety committee relative to this resolution going forward?
I can just to point out that last part, and then maybe Dr. Hammond can share his comments. I am the chair of the safety committee, and so I was working with Ms. Harbin specifically on this resolution. I do myself and Ms. Edwards are on the safety committee, so it is my hope that, and we've had conversations about this, Ms. Edwards. I know that we will work together and to be able to use the Safety and Operations Committee as an opportunity to introduce this conversation. I cannot obviously speak on behalf of Ms. Edwards, but I have communicated with her, but the resolution itself was prepared by myself and Ms. Harbin, separate from the Safety and Operations Committee that I am chair.
We don't have a procedure, Mr. Dean, about resolutions having to go through any committee. Any board member can bring forth a resolution on their own. This has been a discussion over the years, and I think even Mr. Carter has mentioned having a policy for how we bring forth resolutions, but there is no policy, and any board member can bring forth a resolution. Over the years, there's also been tension around bringing a resolution at the last minute that you have to vote on that night, which was intentionally why we were trying to push it in tonight so that we would have months of conversation before we even voted on it. Mr. Weiss advised us that we couldn't have this conversation in the back room, that this had to be a conversation in the public, which I think is really important. So the resolution was to just start that. But as far as going through any committee, you don't have to put a resolution through a committee. Any board member can bring forth a resolution on their own.
Mr. Gallagher. Mr. Gallagher, did we lose you?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. So this is such a large, complicated task we were going to undertake. And people ask for trust. And if we're going to build a team, we have to trust each other. We have to do things above board. I saw mentioned there a blue ribbon committee with predominantly community people. You know, we have to bring everybody that's involved in this to the table. We can't limit it. People have reached out to me, juvenile justice people that are graduates of Pittsburgh Public Schools, city policemen who are graduates of Pittsburgh Public Schools. There are a lot of people that we have to reach out and get involved. It can't just be, sounds like it's a little bit limited. Also, we have to listen to everybody. And I know we spent 12 hours on testimony, and the majority of our testimony was about a charter school. And if anybody was listening about this charter school, why parents were singing its praises was the amount of teachers in the building. They didn't say a whole lot about counselors and this and that. They said a lot of teachers. So the teachers can build the trust with our children. And it gets, you know, it always seems like we're trying to trade off something. I've heard, I think someone posted on the, on social media, we got to blow up the system. Well, I think as a board and as administration, we have to get all the data, like Mr. Undine says. Who reports to who? Who does the school police report to? Who is the person that's supposed to know what these citations are? As a matter of fact, we got to even use the same language. People are throwing out arrests, citations, this and that, and it's not even, it's like comparing apples and oranges. So I think we have to do a lot of work as a board and as administrators to see the system right now. Where is it breaking down? Why don't we have this information? And as you know, we want to put outcomes before we get there. So I think Mr. Udine's bringing up probably the most important thing is we have to have all data from all sources. It can't be just limited. It has to be all data from all sources. Just like now in this atmosphere of COVID-19. Okay, how do we know masks work? Okay, you're guessing. Okay, how do we know some things are working? We don't have strict data, we have anecdotal data. So we need all sources of information before we move on this. And I agree that we should appoint or have people sign for a blue ribbon committee. And it is, I think in that resolution, it said 90 days. I'd even be willing to go 60 days. But we have to have everyone at the table. We cannot limit it. We can't let people out and expect them to go along with it because we have to build the trust. And I think a lot of the trust issues have been broken, but I also feel they can be repaired. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
If I could just add a question to Mr. Gallagher's point. A lot of the feedback that I have been getting indicates that all of the referrals to arrests and criminal documentation comes from the school administrative personnel, like the principal and the vice principal, and not the police officers. I need the data on that so that we know procedurally how these criminal charges that fill the school to prison pipeline, how they're generated. Because if we are thinking that the majority of the cases are generated by police officers, but the procedure is that they're actually generated by school principals or assistant principals, we need to know that. That needs to be a part of our data set. And that's the kind of information, both procedurally and historically, we need to receive from the administration. Thank you.
All right. I think we've heard enough on 17.01. We all know we have to read it over. We have a lot more work to do on it. And I understand we still have one other item.
If I can sort of introduce this, PSBA issues a legislative platform, which they then present to the legislature as the position of the PSBA. They have presented two positions to the school districts to consider. This should have been on the agenda. I take responsibility for that with everything else that was going on here. There are two items. Ms. Falls and I discussed this. I'm going to, I think we take these one at a time because they're significantly different. The first suggested platform item for the PSBA is that school boards must maintain local control of collective bargaining and call on the state to impose financial penalties on teachers and the collective bargaining unit for each day that the strike interrupts the delivery of scheduled educational services. So the PSBA is asking school boards to consider whether that language should be part of the PSBA platform. There is another one, but I think it should be dealt with separately. So, and I'll defer to Ms. Follis, anything else to say about this, but the question before the board is, I mean, if the board wishes to consider this, there would either have to be a motion to approve this language or to disapprove it, and we can move on. That's the language.
Ms. Falls, if I may, I move that we refute this. We absolutely say no to this.
I think that I'm going to turn to you, Ms. Wilson, because you know a lot about the collective bargaining unit and et cetera. Could you please provide me, I agree with you by all means, but could you please provide me with some terminology that I could, when we present this to the delegation, which is a voting delegation, how this could be impressed. I'm not sure if it's appropriate to bring in the union on this particular discussion, or could you give me some guidance?
May I
I
first
just say
second
we
this
vote no.
before we start discussion? I'd like to second Ms. Wilson's motion to reject it before we start discussion.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the
Thank
second.
you, but I still am turning to Ms. Wilson.
All right, the reason I vote no, have a motion to vote no on this is because of my experience. You know, there's two sides in negotiations, not just one. And to just find teachers will be absolutely wrong. And I said this before. I am aware of one attorney who strung out negotiations just because he wanted to make more money. And there have been some school board members in some school districts who adamantly refused to even listen, didn't want to talk about things. So it would be totally unfair to put a burden just on one side of the negotiations team. And it is not something that I think that we should ever endorse. Ms. Harbin?
I fully agree. I think, the collective bargaining process is a right, I think, of employees. And I think that, striking is absolutely one of the tools that they're allowed to use. And I don't know why we would put this in there. So I fully agree with you, Ms. Wilson and Ms. Kennedy.
Anyone else? If we have no.
All I can say about this, Ms. Wilson, is that Ms. Getty and I will have to, and Mr. Weiss will have to work on this tomorrow, because this must be turned in by the end of June on a formal paper, and so it can be reviewed by the platform committee. So I still might turn to you for some appropriate words.
All right, that's fine. I think we're at the point where we can vote on this, I believe. Mr. Weiss?
Agree.
Mr. Weiss, you're muted.
This is a roll call on the motion to disapprove the language that I read. So that it's the position of the Pittsburgh School District that it not be included in the PSBA platform. Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
No.
Ms. Edwards, we're voting to disapprove this.
Oh, to disapprove?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
And knowing you as I do, I thought you might support that.
Yes.
Ms. Falls?
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Unequivocally, yes.
Ms. Harbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy?
Absolutely, yes.
Ms. Salafaro,
I'm sorry, can you repeat what is it that we're voting on?
the PSBA Platform Committee has asked school boards to vote whether they wish this language to be in the PSBA legislative platform. And the language essentially would impose financial penalties on teachers and the collective bargaining unit for each day that a strike interrupts the delivery of scheduled educational services. That is not in the law now. Right now, that for teachers, because you have a minimum number of days of instruction, they return to work. This is a major change in the law, and the board motion is to disapprove this, which means this school district does not approve of this language being included in the PSBA platform.
Got it. Then that's a yes.
Mr. Dean?
I had a point of a question for Ms. Falls. Ms. Falls is our PSBA representative. Ms. Falls, did I understand you to support the motion to vote to deny this?
Unequivocally, Mr. Udine, based on some of the reasons that Ms. Wilson listed, absolutely, positively, we strike to have this removed.
Thank you.
Mr. Dean, have you voted?
No, I have not. I'm not sure which way to vote. I'm voting.
Yeah, I just didn't, given the sound sometimes, I thought I might have missed it.
Yes to deny it, to reject it.
That would be if you vote yes, you're voting to reject it.
Okay, yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Okay, we'll so inform PSBA. The other one states that any student that receives public funds for educational purposes should be required to take the PSSA and/or other state assessments. So this is the other provision the PSBA is seeking whether boards want to include this in the platform.
I'm going to make this motion too. I'm going to say no to this. It's discriminatory. There is no reason in the world that they should say just because a family is receiving public funds that they should be required to take a test when everybody else does not have to. It's extremely discriminatory. And the motion is to say no on this.
I second, and you beat me to the punch with the reasons why.
Thank you.
I would also add, this is not all written because students don't receive public funds for educational purposes. As I read this, I thought it might say school districts are required. I don't even know what this means. So the motion to disapprove is noted, and anybody else wants to have any comments before we vote? I don't want to
Mr.
take.
White, yeah, I just want to make a comment for the reasons that have been already spoken, yes, but also because many more parents are opting their children out of testing. The only thing that I thought, if we were going to even make any amendments to this, would say it could be recommended that students that are receiving public funds, because so many of our parents are now opting our kids out of it, so that we wouldn't be held accountable as a district. But if the majority of the board feels that it's no flat rate, I will agree with that.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes, go ahead.
This is absolutely obscene, and I think not only should we vote no, I think we should tell them we don't even want to take these tests. These tests are a waste of money. They are horrible, and that's all I'm going to say on that.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Anyone else? All right, then, Mr. Weiss, I think we can move forward with a vote.
is a roll call to disapprove this in the same fashion as the last one. Mr. Carter,
Yes.
Ms. Edwards,
Yes.
Ms. Falls,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher, Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Ms. Harbin,
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy,
Absolutely, yes.
Ms. Talaferro,
Yes.
Mr. Dean,
I want to ask Ms. Falls, what's happening with this PSBA group you representing?
Well, fortunately, Mr. Dean, actually a good thing, because this is a representation of school boards across our state. So different people have different views. So that's the point of why this is a good thing, because we get to speak our piece. And this doesn't work for our district. No, and I can't speak for anybody else's, but for Pittsburgh, these things don't work. So I am glad that we have the floor and the opportunity to voice our opinion. So it's a good thing.
Thank you, Ms. Falls. I vote yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
So those are both, we'll notify the PSBA of the district's position. And thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Okay, and Mr. Lacy, you and I and Ms. Kennedy can work on this tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're now come to the part of the legislative meeting where if anyone has any announcements to be brought before us this evening that do not require a legislative vote, this is the time. Ms. Kennedy, I see hand flashing and I saw Ms. Falls.
Okay, what I just want to say, as a follow-up to those last two votes, is Ms. Falls, when you hear back from the PSBA, when all votes are in from the various districts, can you let us know the outcome?
Why, of course, as I do every year.
Okay, just want to, because I don't want to wait till the October meeting. I'm curious whether I'm guessing the platform committee needed these votes to determine if they get on the platform for the October meeting.
Yeah, and I should know that in August. So as they keep me informed, I will keep you informed.
And I appreciate that. Thank you. And I just want to wish our students and staff to have a relaxing summer for those that have the time off. So, and everyone to be safe. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Okay, I guess that's me now, Ms. Wilson, huh?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. First off, I wanted to thank Carrick High School for providing masks that say Carrick High School on them. That was presented for the Teachers Appreciation, and I thought it was very thoughtful that they sent me one. So I want to thank them. Also, the CTE folks, as you have read the articles and etc., a group of career and technical education teachers in a variety of positions made masks and shields and guards and provided them to nursing homes, to Allegheny General. Nice article with Dr. Hamlet handing them out and Miss Mike. Great job, and I think again the more publicity we get for career and technical education is the more people are going to want to bring their kids back to Pittsburgh public schools when they see what opportunities are available. So career and technical education, thumbs up. We had a light up night for our students. We know that our seniors were deprived of, because of COVID, a lot of activities, but May 29th, 2020 was light up night. And some of us made some makeshift things and that were out there. They actually look more like Halloween than actually a 2020 light up night. But it was the best that people could do to celebrate some of that. And I do know that signs and etc. were given to students of our seniors. The virtual graduations, I can't say enough praise. I was blown away. It was above and beyond my expectations. I mean, I don't know what I expected, but what I got was more than I even thought was possible. So I know a big shout out goes to Dr. Walters, to Dave, and I don't want to start naming because I don't want to forget anybody, but thank you to all of you who participated in that virtual graduation ceremonies. In addition, Carrick, we had, as other schools did, um, had the diplomas given out and gifts and pictures taken and families on the yards. And of course, safe distancing was utilized and masks were on and etc. But at least it was a way that the kids could see each other, again, just see each other, and the families could participate and the kids could have somewhat of a feeling of graduation. So again, commend big shout out to, I know Carrick High School because I was there, but I know other schools did things too. And you know, who says we don't care about our kids? Let someone say that one more time. So anyways, in addition to that, on May 29th, it was announced from PSBA that we received a $1,200 scholarship because of the keynote series of webinars that I had been attending, and we were fortunate enough to be picked one of the schools, districts to win that. We're in the process of looking into whereabouts. We think since the mail was disrupted, that somewhere it's kind of gotten lost somewhere. But I've worked with Dr. Hamlet and Ms. Fearby Jones and the secretaries, and we will get to it. And one of our students will be with the input of the board, since it was board driven, nominate or give that to an appropriate student. I just want to give yet another shout out. I know the CTE. I worked again with Miss Mike and Miss Harbin on the Imagine PPS career exploration in middle school, and these folks are doing phenomenal things. It's like someone said to me, "Here, Miss Falls, here's $1 million. Go ahead and help us start creating a middle school." I mean, they've got it. And a lot of people on this particular committee are working really hard to envision this and to make it happen so that we can begin from elementary to middle to high school, have a real solid program of career and technical education, a variety of occupations. Listen, we need plumbers, we need electricians. People are stopping me all the time. So please, we've got to start getting some of these things into our programs. That was a pitch, Dr. Hamlet. Did you hear it? Did you hear it? Did you hear it? Okay, you're shaking your head yes.
Yes, I heard it.
All right. Okay. And also, again, as always, and particularly this time of turmoil in our world, I want to thank the military, past, present, and future. Again, with members of my family still over in Baghdad and etc. So please remember them in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ms. Falls.
So
All right,
hard.
Ms. Telefero and then Mr. Udine.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. So a couple things. I know graduation has been mentioned, and I just want to thank the administration team for the work that they put into making virtual graduations work. I know it wasn't the best of circumstances for our students, but I appreciate that we were at least able to do something to honor them. Actually spent some time, though Brashear is not one of my schools officially. Brashear is always my favorite school in my heart. And I got to attend the drive-by diploma pickup at Brashear High School on the 15th. And it was just so amazing to see how excited the students were, and you know, just the atmosphere, the families that were celebrating. It was just a wonderful time. So I thank you all for that. I also attended all of my virtually attended all of my promotions for all of my K-5 and K-8 schools. And the songs are forever stuck in my head. But it was just a great time, even just that we got to celebrate our little people that are moving up to middle school and on to high school in the 9th grade. I also want to acknowledge two of the transfer positions. One of Amita Schmidt at Pittsburgh Brashear to the assistant principal role. Amita is a great person, and I know that the staff and administration at Brashear and the students are very fortunate to have her on board in that role. And then I also just want to acknowledge Stefan Sarita, I believe is how you say his name. And we follow each other on social media, but he seems like, he will do a great job at Westinghouse. And I kind of consider Westinghouse now my alma mater, as I was a graduate of Wilkinsburg Senior High School, and my school is no longer in existence. So I definitely wish him well at Westinghouse as the new principal. And then finally, I know at the beginning of our session today, we acknowledged, or we at least had a moment of silence for George Floyd, but I also want to acknowledge those other individuals who have lost their lives over the past several months to very violent murders. And I also want to acknowledge there have been a number of students who I know, Pittsburgh public students who I know who have passed away. And one in particular, I just want to send my thoughts to the family of Kymere Buchanan Fuller, who is a kindergartner at Pittsburgh Dilworth. This is one of the schools that I represent, who passed away tragically, to my understanding, on Saturday, June 13th. So I just want to keep and encourage everyone to keep the students, the staff, and the family of this young Dilworth scholar in our thoughts in this time. So thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Udine.
Thank you. I want to also join in on widening our lens to include all of the people who have been victims of police violence, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and also mention the people of Georgia brought back indictments today on 3 indictments on the Ahmaud Arbery murder. And it's the struggle of the people that bring these indictments forward. Police killings are up to 1,000 people a year in America. And we have to strengthen our resolve. Pittsburgh, I think, has shown up big in the demonstrations, and our rejection of police violence. And I just want to broaden the lens of the number of people who we acknowledge and extend our condolence to their families. Thank you.
Okay, now as far as hands go, again, I don't see that raise hand thing on the participant list, so I saw, and I also got a text message asking to be recognized, so sometimes I get text messages. All right, Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. I'd like to give a tip of the hat to the young man today that sang "Lift Every Voice and Sing." I mean, what a powerful way to start off our meeting. And I'd also like to acknowledge a young man, Sean Reese, He was a member of our Perry football team. He graduated in 2003, 2002. Outstanding young man. He lost his life May 31st. The young men of Perry are putting together a scholarship in his name. We're going to retire his number, homecoming number 15. And it's really brought together a community. I hate a tragedy to do this, but this violence is just devastating. A young man who was community organizing, doing so many good things in Homewood. And I'd be remiss to say that he was a special kid, and he grew into be a very, very special young man. And I'm very proud to see these young men come together and do all this work. So just keep his family, his mom, Ms. Lewis, in your prayers. He has young children, keep them in your prayers, and hopefully all of us together can help bring an end to all this craziness. And with that, I appreciate this board, and I also appreciate the people of Pittsburgh. I think we can come together and really, really do something with our schools, and now is the time. There's no hiding. Accountability is has to be from top down, everyone. And with that, I thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher.
Ms. Harbin?
Ms. Harbin, is that you?
Yep.
Go ahead. Mhm.
I just want to start by saying that I popped the live stream on real quick and there was closed captioning. So I want to thank everybody for getting that to happen. I want to say quickly, congratulations to all the COVID graduates. Good luck with your future. I know you'll shine bright, and hashtag PPS proud. I want to just give a shout out to the administration and the hundreds of people that are working on what we're calling All In, trying to make a plan for reopening in the fall. And I'm on a team, and it's actually been really interesting working across with principals and teachers and IT staff and community members to try to make some decisions based on what we learned from our emergency learning and what we hope will happen to make it better for the fall. So thank you for doing that. Thank you to everybody who testified and everybody who sat through the hours and hours of testimony. I think public testimony is one of the most important jobs that we have, is to listen to our constituents. And I think it was very powerful to have hundreds of people come and speak to us. There was a teacher at Dice who passed away, and I cannot pronounce his name. If somebody, Billy, you know it? I know, I'm sorry.
Simoleski.
What is it?
It's almost like Simoleski. Mike.
Simoleski?
Big Mike.
That's it. That's it. Thank you.
Sorry, those Polish names get me every time, but he was a beloved teacher at Alderdice, and it was a shock to the community. He did pass away tragically. I want to thank Ms. Talaferro for suggesting that we sing the Black National Anthem, because I think it really made a difference at the beginning of our meeting to sing that and take that moment in memory of the people that were brutally murdered by police. And on that note, I want to congratulate Alderdice. They had an amazing Black Lives Matter sit-in last week, and my son was part of the organizing, and he got to play the trumpet, and it was a really strong, powerful sit-in. And if you can catch it on video somewhere, you should watch it. Representative Summer Lee spoke, and she's amazing, and it was really great. And Kappa is having a sit-in that I just wanted to announce, a Black Lives Matter sit-in at Point State Park on Thursday, July 2nd from 4 to 6. And they say Black students matter, and I agree, and I hope we can all go and support the students. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Miss Edwards, by any chance, do you have some comments?
To say thank you to our staff for those 2 nights of reading 247, 48. They did an awesome job. Miss Erica did an awesome job. Also, Mr. Gallagher, they've already approached me for the retiring of Sean Reese's number 15. I did agree. And I'm thankful that we've come to the end of some more meetings this week. Everybody enjoy your weekend and have a good evening. Good night.
Ms. Wilson, can I just add on a personal note? I do want to thank everybody who's given me their condolences with the sudden loss of a family member that I experienced this week. It's really nice to know that in addition to all the business we do, that we can look at each other as humans. So thank you to everyone. Thank you.
Sure. Mr. Carter, do you have anything, Mr. Carter? Not hearing anything. Okay. Am I missing somebody? All right, well, I'm just going to say this. It seems like this is the night for, well, first I want to say thanks to all those who worked really hard to make graduation and promotions somewhat memorable for our 5th, 8th graders and our graduating seniors. It certainly wasn't what they expected, what they were looking forward to, but I know that each school did something a little bit special. I did go to Obama and Westinghouse when they picked up their diplomas, and I want you to know Westinghouse is voting for having their graduation, their commencement at Westinghouse because they had so much fun. They enjoyed it tremendously, and they say next year they don't even want to go anywhere else. They just want to have it right there at the school. And since this is a night for remembering people and speaking condolences to everyone, this was every year commencement time, around prom time. And because of it's just this time of the year with everything that's been going on, I always remember Dion Hall, who was a student I had at Manchester, and I believe he was graduating from Oliver was still in existence, and he was either an Oliver or Perry student. I can't remember, but he tragically was killed by police officers on his prom night. And he was in a van, and of course it was a made-up story as far as I know, from what I can tell, because nobody who worked very hard to purchase his stuff for prom, flowers for his girlfriend, all of the wonderful things that he did to prepare for that prom, there's no way in the world he went into a pizza shop on that night and decided to rob it. As far as I'm concerned, it was always a made-up story. He had everything he needed, and he was tragically killed. And you don't hear too much about that, but I think it's important to remember people. And at this time of the year, I'd like to remember Dion Hall. He was a good guy. He shouldn't have happened to him. So at this time, if there's no more announcements, I think I would like to have a motion to adjourn. A motion and a second to adjourn, people.
So moved.
Okay, it sounded like Ms. Falls and Ms. Kennedy.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor of adjourning this meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Ms.
all.
Wilson. Thank you, guys.
Enjoy the rest of the
Good night.
Everybody.
Night.
Good night.